Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Ghora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Ghora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Ghora Bhakta Vrinda. Okay, so we are reading the 4th chapter of the Adi-Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the first. Oops, 1 second. The first 3 verses don't have purports, the first 4. So, but where we're at is we're hearing about Lord Chaitanya's 3 internal reasons for coming to, for manifesting here. And we're just finishing the first verse that we're going to read today, 158. We're just finishing the second reason, which is, does anyone know the second? Well, probably won't remember from a week ago. It was to taste the sweetness that Radharani experiences. And then we're going to go into the third reason, which is to experience the bliss that Radharani feels in loving Krishna. Okay? So first I'll read just the English for the first few verses. Lord Krishna, this is 158, yeah. Lord Krishna's own beauty attracts Lord Krishna himself, but because he cannot fully enjoy it, his mind remains full of sorrow. Okay, the next verse. Oh, is it here? Because I turned off the Wi-Fi, so I can't see the... Yeah, I'll take the hard book. Yeah. 1 second. I'll find it. Okay, and then text 159 is, this is a description of his second desire. Now please listen as I describe the third. Text 160. This conclusion of rasa is extremely deep. Only Swarup Damodar knows much about it. Anyone else who claims to know it must have heard it from him, for he was the most intimate companion of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then text 162. Put on some glasses here. Gopi Gunera Premara Radha Bhava. What is that word? Nama. Okay. Gopi Pramera Prema Radha Bhava Nama. Please chant that. That's a much better, that sounds a lot better than when I said it. Vishuddha Nirmala Prema Labha Nahe Kama. Very good. Okay. So it's a small print here. So Gopi Gunera means of the gopis. And Pramera, we know the word prema, of the love. Radha Bhava means Radha Bhava. Or Rudha Bhava means Rudha Bhava. Nama means name. Vishuddha, we know what that means, pure. Nirmala also means spotless. Prema means love. Kabu, at any time. Nahe is not, and kama means lust. So, translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. The love of the gopis is called Rudha Bhava. It is pure and spotless. It is not at any time lust. Purport. As already explained, the position of the gopis in their loving dealings with Krishna is transcendental. Their emotion is called Rudha Bhava. Although it is apparently like mundane sex, one should not confuse it with mundane sexual love, for it is pure and unadulterated love of Godhead. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmiliena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So when I was a younger person, I didn't like this chapter very much. Or I shouldn't say I didn't like it. I couldn't relate to this chapter, the fourth chapter of the Adi-Lila. I was Sankirtan, I was a brahmachari. Sankirtan was my service. I was probably 19 years old at the time. I could relate to the third chapter. That I could relate to. We had verses like text 40, the religious practice, what's wrong, glasses? The religious practice for the age of Kali is to broadcast the glories of the holy name. Only for this purpose has the Lord in a yellow color descended as Lord Chaitanya. That, as my service was Sankirtan, and all the classes in the 70s was all about Sankirtan, I could relate to that. My focus was on Sankirtan, and of course, in that same chapter, the famous verse from the 11th canto is quoted, Krishna Varnam Trisa Krishna, Nam Sangopangastra Parsadam, Jagyai Sankirtana Prayer, Yajantihi Sumedasa. That people who have, in this Kali Yuga, people who have some intelligence worship Krishna or the Lord Chaitanya accompanied by his associates. How? By doing the Sankirtan Yagya. So I couldn't, so it actually kind of upset me when I was read to the next chapter, this chapter that we're studying now, and it said, well, his internal reasons for coming were to understand the sweetness and greatness of Radharani's love for him, to taste the sweetness that Radharani experiences, Krishna's own sweetness, and to experience the supreme bliss of Radharani. I wasn't against that, but I couldn't relate to it very much, because I just thought, the whole purpose of Lord Chaitanya's descent was to spread the Sankirtan movement. So then I read this, and it really satisfied me. It was a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote in 1974 to Nandalal. And he said, the explanation given by Rameshwar that Sankirtan is Lord Chaitanya's Leela, which he compares to the gopis trying to engage others in Krishna's service, is the correct understanding. So okay, very good. Then I saw a connection between the gopis and book distribution. And we also had heard, we didn't have the internet in the 70s. We didn't, there wasn't so much communication. Telephone calls cost $2 a minute in those days. $2 was a lot of money. So we didn't have a lot of communication. But we had some vague, we heard about the Gopi Bhava Club. This was, and how many of you have heard of the Gopi Bhava Club? Very few. Prithu Prabhu, I know you have. It was a group of devotees in the early summer of 1976 in Los Angeles who they especially didn't focus on the Bhagavad-gita, but rather they focused on mainly the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the verses about the gopis' love for Krishna, to the exclusion of the other aspects of our Krishna conscious presentation. So here's a quote from Pradyumna Prabhu, who was Prabhupada's Sanskrit editor and traveled with Prabhupada. He says, in Los Angeles, some people said to me that this Gita with Krishna and Arjuna is lower. They had no taste for that. These people say, we're interested in Krishna and the gopis, the higher thing. He told this to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, who says this? Bring them here immediately. Whoever says this, what are their names? So they were brought into Prabhupada's room, and Prabhupada said, so you're interested in gopi things? Yes, they said. Some discussion went on, and then someone said, isn't it true that in Goloka Vrindavan, the position of the gopis is the highest? The gopis are higher than a cow, for example, or a blade of grass. Prabhupada said, no. No difference. No difference. And then Pradyumna replied, but Prabhupada, between a gopi and a cow? Prabhupada repeated, no difference. For you, no difference. So that's the key point. Because we all know other places where Prabhupada was, we understand even the relative nature of the different rasas. But he said, for you, meaning in our stage of our development, especially in 1976, you would say, I would guess that most of the devotees in Los Angeles in 1976 have been chanting 4 or 5 years, most of them. How many of you have chanted more than 4 years? Okay, that's so many of us, right? Back then, we have to understand, we were very young. We didn't know anything, We've been chanting 4 or 5 years. So Prabhupada said, for you, no difference. And then Pradyumna says, it was like a lightning bolt. Prabhupada was absolutely adamant, absolutely fierce. He insisted, for you, no difference. And then Prabhupada wrote a letter in 1976. Here in Los Angeles, we have found that there is a group of about 40 devotees who privately meet to discuss the intimate pastimes, artificially thinking that they can enter into the understanding of the gopis prematurely. Remember, they'd been chanting 4 or 5 years. Right? Prithubru, you've been chanting 55 years maybe. Like that, yeah. 4 or 5 years back then. This will create havoc in our society, and the result will be that if this is allowed to go on, our preaching work will be greatly hampered. He made a connection between prematurely focusing on the gopis' love for Krishna and the preaching work. This premature desire to understand the Lila is due to mundane sex life desire, as we have seen amongst many of the Babajis and Sahajiyas in Vrindavan. Also, the devotees were listening to a Babaji. Somehow they had made a connection with a Babaji there and hearing from him. And then Prabhupada came out with a famous saying, first deserve, then desire. You've heard that? First deserve, then desire. And then he said, so we have to hear Prabhupada's balance. Like before, he said, for you, no difference. And then he said, it is not forbidden, but it is not for neophytes. It is not forbidden, but it is not for neophytes. And then I'll just read one other. I'm careful. There's a lot here about reading things, but I'll try to mix that so you don't fall asleep. So Prabhupada writes in the Adi-Lila, chapter 8, the word rahastane in a secluded place is very significant. Talks about Krishna and his pastimes. Now, all of us are preachers here. We should listen to this carefully. Talks about Krishna and his pastimes, especially his pastimes in Vrindavan, and his dealing with the gopis are all very confidential. They are not subject matter for public discussion, because those who have no understanding of the transcendental nature of Krishna's pastimes always commit great offenses. We don't want people we're preaching to commit offenses. Thinking Krishna to be an ordinary human being and the gopis ordinary girls. Following the principle of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who never discussed the dealings between Krishna and the gopis publicly. Devotees in the Krishna conscious movement are enjoined not to discuss the pastimes of Lord Krishna in Vrindavan in public. For the general public, Sankirtan is the most effective method to awaken Krishna consciousness. Okay, so I think that was the Gopi Bhava Club, and Prabhupada really stamped it out in 1976. But then, Srila Prabhupada would say different things at different times. Like in the very first purport of the Bhagavatam, the very first purport, he says, within the past 500 years, many erudite scholars and acharyas like Jiva Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Vallabhacharya, and many others distinguished scholars, even after the time of Lord Chaitanya, made elaborate commentaries on the Bhagavatam. And the serious student would do well to attempt to go through them to better relish the transcendental message. That's on that side. And then in 1973, he wrote a letter to Chaivana saying, Brahmananda Swami has read me your letter regarding the students there reading other books. I request you to stop this practice. And if you don't know the history so well, we basically, unless we went outside to hear from some other sampradaya, we didn't know, especially because nothing had been translated into English of these other books by our great acharyas, probably until the late 80s, maybe early 90s, a devotee named Kusakrata Prabhu. And he all of a sudden translated all these amazing books that often dealt with, Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes in a more intimate way. And also a little later, Bhanu Swami also. That's not a criticism of them, but it's just that they weren't available. But now, I did a little research before coming. One time Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur asked his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, can we print the Govinda Lilamrita? What did he say? Yes. What? 2 copies. I thought it was only 1. 2? Okay, 1 or 2. He said, you can print 1 copy. Now, I just did this 10 minutes ago. You can get the whole PDF for free on the internet. And if you have a little money, you can go to Amazon, and for 637 rupees, you can get the Govinda Lilamrita. What to speak of the Vilaps Kushamanjali and the Sandarbhas and the writings of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Everything is so available now. And it's all there. Don't even have to spend anything. Even a very well-known, I think he passed away now, but a very well-known Babaji very learned Babaji from Radhakund, all of his books are available for free. I'm not saying go out and get them, but for free to download. So it's a different world. And yet, we have Prabhupada's warnings, his concerns. He said, he gave the example of a man who said, whenever I hear the name Radha, I always think of a barber's wife whose name is Radha. So in other words, it's so easy for us to still take our mundane consciousness into this realm of transcendence. And in the preface to the Krishna book, Prabhupada wrote that in these Western countries, when someone sees a cover of a book like Krishna, he immediately asks, who is Krishna? Who is the girl with Krishna? But it may be interesting, after saying that, Prabhupada only talks about Krishna in the preface, doesn't mention the girl. Doesn't mention Srimati Radharani. Another example of his caution was, he says, don't show the feet of the deity of Srimati Radharani, although Krishna's feet should be exposed. So much caution is there. And yet, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, Srimati Radhika is the teacher of the mellow of conjugal love. The pure love between Radha and Krishna is meant to be discussed and contemplated. And in fact, hearing these pastimes, as Prabhupada writes, can cure us of lust. So here's from Prabhupada. Sukadev Goswami concludes this episode of the Rasa. This is from the Krishna book. Concludes this episode of the Rasa Lila by pointing out that if a person hears from the right source about the pastimes of Krishna, who is Vishnu himself, and the gopis, who are expansions of his energy, then he will be relieved of the most dangerous type of disease, namely lust. In other words, one who actually hears the Rasa Lila will become completely freed from the lusty desire of sex life and elevated to the highest level of spiritual understanding. Generally, because people hear the Rasa Lila from Mayavadis, and they themselves are Mayavadis, people become more and more implicated in sex life. The conditioned soul, that's us, should hear the Rasa Lila dance from an authorized spiritual master and be trained by him so that he can understand the whole situation. So this is now we're going to change gears a little bit in this talk based on this sentence. I just read it. The conditioned soul should hear the Rasa Lila dance from an authorized spiritual master and be trained by him so that he can understand the whole situation. So what should we do? We should be hearing these pastimes of Lord Krishna. And yet there's so much warning about how to do that. So then the rest of this class is going to be Srila Prabhupada's presentation of Radharani. Because we just read how if one hears from the right spiritual master, then we understand Rasa Lila, we become free from sex life. So I want to read some things and talk about Prabhupada's presentation of Srimati Radharani. And before I do that, I just wanted to say I've had the great fortune of living in Vrindavan for many years in the past. And I would say when I think of the essence of how Prabhupada presents the gopis and Srimati Radharani, differently than one might hear, especially in Radhakund, but especially there, is that Prabhupada focused on the selfless mood of the gopis. The selfless service of the gopis. That was his focus. He talked about relishing, and to be fair, other people talk about the selfless service of the gopis, but their focus is usually on relishing the pastimes. And Prabhupada's focus was on observing and understanding how selfless the gopis are. Right? They gave up everything to go, for example, during the Rasa Lila, to go see Krishna. Or even if we go to a different rasa, Mother Yashoda, she would be happy to die hundreds of times rather than Krishna to have one drop of perspiration. I mean, what kind of love is that, right? So I just wanted to make that overall point. So I'm going to make some presentation from Prabhupada's books, from his lectures, and from his talks. Prabhupada gave such a sweet and pure understanding of Radharani. And he put knowledge of Radharani in his very early books. 1967 was the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. He spoke about Srimati Radharani there. Of course, Krishna book, 1968. I'm thinking, how many of you were not born in 1968? Not born. Okay. Almost everyone, okay. And then 1969, the Nectar of Devotion. And in 1966, right, what was that? Is that an important year for us? Yes. Incorporation of ISKCON. In the summer of 1966, Prabhupada said that we have to fast for Janmashtami. Nobody knew that you had to fast for Janmashtami. He said because Krishna is strong and hard. But on Radhastami, you only have to fast until noon because Radharani is soft and kind. Isn't that a sweet way to think of Radharani? And then his first explanation of Srimati Radharani is that Radharani is the best devotee of Krishna because she loves him the most. Simple and sweet, right? Then Prabhupada went on to explain, at that same time in 66, that Srimati Radharani was interested in the welfare of all devotees and that we could pray to her. He said, you can't go so easily directly to Krishna, but if Krishna's devotee is pleased with you, then he or she will recommend you to Krishna, and Krishna will be obliged to give you his mercy. He has to. This is especially true if you get the mercy of Srimati Radharani. And then in the Nectar of Devotion, under the category of attracting Krishna, Prabhupada explains the principle of approaching Krishna through Radha. So this is from page 16. To perform devotional service means to follow in the footsteps of Radharani. And the devotees of Vrindavan put themselves under the care of Radharani in order to achieve perfection in their devotional service. In other words, devotional service is not an activity in the material world. It is directly under the control of who? Srimati Radharani. We're all doing devotional service all day long, hopefully. It's the guide, it's all under the control of Srimati Radharani. In Bhagavad-gita, it is confirmed that the Mahatmas, or great souls, are under the protection of Daivi Prakriti, the internal energy. And who is that? Maharaj is going to keep repeating her name. Radharani. So being directly under the control of the internal potency of Krishna, devotional service attracts even Krishna himself. And if we think of, Prabhupada saying Krishna is hard and Srimati Radharani is soft and kind, if you look under the heading of compassion in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada writes, instead of offering obeisances to Krishna, listen to this, instead of offering obeisances to Krishna, devotees offer obeisances to his compassionate nature. Actually, because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's very difficult to approach him. But the devotees take advantage of his compassionate nature, which is represented by who, Maharaj? Srimati Radharani. And they always pray, we should always pray to Radharani for Krishna's compassion. So again, such a pure and sweet and wonderful way of describing Radharani to us. Prabhupada sometimes described Radharani as Krishna's tender-hearted female counterpart. Tender-hearted. So when we take darshan every day, we can be looking at Srimati Radharani and thinking of how tender-hearted she is. And how if she recommends us to Rasa Bihari, it's all done, no problem. Right? And of course, Prabhupada told us we can pray to Radharani. We are praying to Radharani constantly because she is the Hare in Hare Krishna. Prabhupada also talked about Krishna being the queen of Vrindavan. He wrote in the Nectar of Devotion, Krishna attracts everyone, but devotional service attracts Krishna. The symbol of devotional service in the highest degree is? Very good, all right. Krishna is called Madan Mohan, which means he is so attractive that he can defeat the attraction of thousands of cupids. But Radharani is still more attractive, for she can attract Krishna. Therefore, devotees call her Madan Mohan Mohini, the attractor of Cupid. And then in August 1968 in Montreal, Prabhupada celebrated Radhastami. And he said that the Radha Krishna philosophy is a great philosophy and is understood on the liberated stage, not the conditional stage. So here, again, Prabhupada giving some caution. So in this Vidhi Marg, when you have no love for God or Krishna, you have to follow the regulated principles and automatically there is practice. when practicing, just like you practice this mridanga playing, in the beginning it is not in order, but when you become well versed in the practice, the sound will become very nice. And believe me, I wasn't there, but in 1968, I can tell you the mridanga playing was not very in order, because the devotees didn't know anything. They didn't know anything about it. And Prabhupada continues, similarly, when we are engaged by regulated principles in the worship of Radha Krishna, that is called Vidhi Marg. And actually, when you are on the love platform, that is called Rag Marg. So without Vidhi Marg, if anyone wants to learn the Rag Marg immediately, that is foolishness. That is foolishness. Nobody can pass MA exam without going through regulated principles or primary school and colleges. So therefore, Prabhupada says, I do not indulge in the discussions of Radha and Krishna so easily. Rather, go on with the regulated principles at the present moment. Gradually, as you become purified, as you become on the transcendental platform, you will understand what is Radha Krishna. So we shall await for this fortunate moment when we are liberated. Then we shall understand Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir. Now, of course, this was spoken to devotees who may have been chanting 1 year, 1968, maybe at the most 2 years. So hopefully many of our devotees, as we've grown older in bhakti, have more of a adhikar. And so in that 68 lecture, it's really, and then Prabhupada asked for a harmonium. And what did he chant? Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Daite. And then he went on to explain the song, right? And he said, she is so dear to Krishna. Everyone is trying to love Krishna, but Krishna is trying to love somebody else. How great she is. Just try to understand. The whole world, the whole universe, all living entities are trying to love Krishna. Krishna Prema. Krishna Prema is so valuable, but Krishna is after Radharani. Just see how Radharani is great. Try to understand the greatness of Radharani. She is so great. We have to offer our respect. And how is she? Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite. And Prabhupada continues. Taruni means young girls. You will see the pictures. They are all young girls. She is most beautiful. She is enchanting to the young girls also. She is so beautiful. Gokula Taruni Mandala Mahite Damadara Rati Vardhana Veshe. She always dresses herself so nicely that Damodar Krishna becomes attracted to her beauty. She is the only lovable object of Krishna, and she is the queen of Vrindavan. You will go to Vrindavan. None of them have been to Vrindavan yet, right? I don't think anyone had, right? 68? Anyone know? I don't think anyone had been to Vrindavan yet. Maybe Kirtanananda, I'm not sure. Yeah, Chutananda, yeah. You will go to Vrindavan. If you go to Vrindavan, everyone is worshipping Radharani. Rani means queen. They are always saying, Jai Radhe. All the devotees in Vrindavan, they are worshippers of Radharani. So then in 1972 in Vrindavan, Prabhupada said, there is no one as great as Krishna. Matam paratanam nanyat. Then Prabhupada paused. And he said, oh, there is one person greater than Krishna. That is, yes. He said, but that is out of love. So just a little bit more, then we'll take, let me see, how's the time? Okay, we have time for questions. So going back to that 1968 Radhastami, and Prabhupada's explaining Karunam Karumai Karuna Bharite Sanaka Sanatana Varnita Charite. Now somebody might say, oh, you are so great learned scholar. You are so great saintly person, and you are begging mercy from an ordinary girl? How is that? Therefore, Rupa Goswami says, oh, this is not ordinary girl. Sanaka Sanatan Varnita Charite. This girl's description is possible to be made only by great saintly persons like Sanak and Sanatana. She is not ordinary. And then in the introduction to the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada wrote, without Radha, listen to this, without Radha there is no meaning to Krishna. And without Krishna there is no meaning to Radha. Because of this, the Vaishnava philosophy first of all pays obeisances to and worships the internal pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord. Thus the Lord and his potency are always referred to as Radha Krishna. So one time, I don't know, how many of you have been to ISKCON Chicago? Yes. What are the name of the deities there? Kishore, Kishori. So someone asked Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, as we just read here, Radha's name comes first. So why Kishore, Kishori? Because they don't have Radha Kishore, they just Shishi Kishore, Kishori. Prabhupada said, because we saved the best for last. Right? So just one more, and then I'll take questions, comments. This is from a 1969 lecture. So everything I'm reading, it's all from Srila Prabhupada, exclusively. So, but listen to this, and then we'll take questions. If we approach Krishna through Radharani, through her mercy, then it becomes very easy. So again, remember that as you're taking darshan of SriSriRadhaRasbihari every day. And of course, Lord Chaitanya, who's Radha and Krishna combined. Through her mercy, then it becomes very easy. If Radharani recommends, this devotee is very nice, then Krishna immediately accepts, however a fool I may be. Because it is recommended by Radharani, Krishna accepts. Therefore, in Vrindavan, you will find all the devotees, they are chanting more Radha's name than Krishna's. Wherever you go, you will find the devotees are addressing Jai Radhe. And Prabhupada he didn't appreciate some of the Brijbasis who didn't understand Radharani at all, but he did appreciate the simplicity of even the rickshaw drivers saying Jai Radhe. Where they are glorifying Radharani. They are more interested in worshiping Radharani because however fallen I may be, if somehow or another I can please Radharani, then it's very easy for me to understand Krishna. So if you just look at, even the morning program, right? We sing Guru Vastakam, and this 5th and 6th verse are about Radharani and the spiritual master's connection with Srimati Radharani. Then we have Tulsi-Puja. I mean, how could you, it's one of the most intimate prayers. We sing every day. And, there was no rule in the Gaudiya Math, for example, that you had to sing Jai Radha Madhava before class. But of all the different possible songs that could be sung, Prabhupada chose every day to sing Jai Radha Madhava. Prabhupada's father would pray for every sadhu who came to his house, please bless my son to become a devotee of Srimati Radharani. And when Prabhupada was on the boat going to America, he wrote a poem and he said, my dear brothers, you cannot get success in Krishna consciousness unless you worship Srimati Radharani. So Prabhupada's connection with Srimati Radharani is, as we can see here, isn't it just wonderful, such a sweet way that Prabhupada presents our relationship with Srimati Radharani. So, what comments, questions, thoughts do you have? We have some time. Maharaj?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Raj Bihari Prabhu, thank you so much for this class. And my question is, you were referring to the Gopi Bhava Club.
Yeah.
And they were saying that Krishna and Arjuna are lower than the Madhurya Ras in Vrindavan. And Prabhupada was saying, no difference for you.
Right.
And you were making the point that these devotees were only chanting about 4 or 5 years at that time. So what about now?
What
Are we
about-
ready? Are we ready for discriminating now? What's the threshold? When are we advanced enough to do this?
Well, now we face a challenge. And that challenge is we have devotees who've been chanting 50 years and devotees who've been chanting 50 days, right? And this will be, hopefully by Krishna's mercy and Lord Chaitanya's mercy, this will be a challenge that will go on forever, because that means the preaching is going on. Because whenever there's preaching going on, that means there'll be new devotees. And new devotees should be focusing on Bhagavad-gita and the first 2 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Like that. But also we understand by Prabhupada's grace, we would hope that, we know that Prabhupada's mercy is so great that his followers can make great advancement in Krishna consciousness. By the way, I was just remembering, as Prabhupada was leaving to the airport, he said in Los Angeles, after the whole Gopi Baba thing, he said something very endearing. He said, "It's not that we're boycotting the gopis." Having signs, "No more gopis, no more," right? Not that we're boycotting the gopis. I thought that was sweet that he said that. So, therefore, I read that point where Prabhupada said, in the right place, the right time, the right circumstance, devotees who have, cleared or very much cleared anartha nivritti, which we certainly know that Prabhupada can give devotees mercy to attain that and go on to the higher stages. So we just have to be careful. As a matter of fact, I was just listening to a talk with Prabhupada was talking about some other sampradayas. So this is again balancing it. And then he said, I think it was, maybe it was Hare Prabhu who was asking, well, Prabhupada, what about, I won't mention the sampradaya, no need to. What about such and such sampradaya? They don't necessarily accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he said, oh, they're Vaishnavas, but they won't get the higher rasas. Because Lord Chaitanya is anarpita chirim chirat, right? He's giving the higher rasas in Vrindavan, so they may not get that. But he did respectfully say they're Vaishnavas. So to answer your question, what about now? It's a sensitive thing because we will have hopefully we'll always have young devotees. So our public preaching should be Bhagavad-gita, Bhagavatam, things like that. And very advanced devotees may find times when they, will talk about these things with other advanced devotees. Is that all right?
Well, I'm looking for it's difficult because I'm looking for like kind of an objective threshold. When do we consider ourselves advanced enough? Or should we always consider ourselves young devotees and neophytes?
In the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada said that he was paraphrasing, I believe, Seva Sadhaka Rupena Siddha Rupena Chatari, that verse. And he was saying devotees should externally always act as neophytes. And what that means is attending the morning program, chanting our rounds, showing good sadhana, things like that, even if we're, very exalted in our consciousness. But, bhakti is not a light switch. A light switch, you turn it on or off, right? Does anyone know what a dimmer is? A dimmer is, it's a round thing, and you can make it from the light very little to all the way. It's a spectrum.
I have an app that does that.
Oh, you have an app that does that? Okay. So bhakti is a spectrum. Ado shraddha tata sadhu sangha bhajana kriya narta nivritti, etc., etc. So bhakti is a spectrum, and so there might be a light switch one day you wake up and say, Radhe, right? But it's a gradual process. Yes, Prithu Prabhu. Could pass the microphone to Prithu Prabhu? I hope that was okay, Maharaj.
Thank you very much. What you say is all true. That's our philosophy. However, if we ask the devotees here in the room who has read all the 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, before we come to that, you see, and Lord Chaitanya particularly, he is Radharani's mercy. So the anxiety I have, and we have seen this over the years, over again and again and again, that the focus from Lord Chaitanya shifts toward Radha Krishna. And if you go into the temple in Vrindavan, you see in lecture, you see hundreds of people going by, devotees also. Who stops in front of Lord Chaitanya? Hardly anybody. In front of Krishna Balaram, more. In front of Radha Krishna, 120,000 people. And this is something, there's a problem with it. Because again and again, I remember, I sat in class last year, Ms. Ramesh Maharaj, he sat beside me, and there was a very emphasis, Radha lecture. And he told me, and he's the head of the book distribution for so many years, he said, here we go again, Pritu. It never dies. It comes back again and again and again. So there's a real problem there, particularly if there's a young audience, that our focus has to be on Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda particularly. Now Tamdas Thakur said, people are saying, who is this Nityananda? What can he do for you? What he can do for me? So our Vaishnava Sampradaya has been affected since the beginning of the tendency to bypass all this and go to the top. And so that's my concern in preaching. Everything has to be according to time, place, and circumstances. And particularly, there's a very young crowd of devotees that we should focus on Srila Prabhupada's teaching. As an interesting story, and I told this before, there's one Sankirtan devotee, a lady, who distributes Prabhupada's books for 50 years. And so she has shown that she's trustworthy. So she reports that one day she came to Radhakunda, and there was a Baba came up to her and said, do you want love of Radha? She said, yes, I want to. I can give you love of Radha. Follow. And he gave her a mantra. And she started to chant this mantra, Radha Rani mantra, and she became very attracted. There was something happening there. So, as an effect, she actually stopped book distribution. It's just a year ago. So one night, she reports, and I believe her, I had a dream of Prabhupada. And he came to me, and he took me by the hand, and said, I will show you love of Radha. And they went to Radha Kunda, this is a dream, and he dove with her into the lake, into Radha Kunda. There was a huge table with books there. And hundreds of people around, give me one book, give me one book, give me one book. And he said, this is the love of Radha. Please distribute my books. Help me to distribute my books. And so we have to always keep this in focus, because I've heard from somebody advanced in our movement, he said to me, books, Srila Prabhupada books, I can't hear it anymore. So there's this tendency that we have to be aware of always, to focus how Prabhupada wanted us to be. He wanted us to preach Krishna consciousness. Preaching is the essence. And what you say is true, but everything according to time, place, and audience. Sorry, I didn't want to shoot a hole in it, but a little bit want to put the emphasis on the basics. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Other questions, comments?
Can I?
Yes, Devakinanda Prabhu.
I have 2 questions and 3 comments.
Okay, we only have 10 minutes.
No problem. Which one should I go first?
As you like. Why don't you make a point first?
Well, you are saying about reading the Goswami books and all these things. I challenge anybody. Even if you read Sat Sandarbha today, or Ujjwal Nilmani, or even Govind Lilamrit, nothing will go in head. It depends on advancement, not artificial show up or something.
Very good.
This is one thing. So let's not waste time on that. Second comment is, those days in 70s, 80s, our training was, we have to be like horse in horse cart, what you call blinder, blinker, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? So we cannot read any other book, only Prabhupada books, to be focused to get love of Krishna. If you read so many other books, it is like a horse without a blinker, and your horse cart will not go, but so your Krishna consciousness will go down.
Yes.
That's, And those days I remember, Giraj Swami and myself, we used to go in Brahmachari ashram, and search which devotee are reading, because we didn't have much Hindi translation. Mostly was English book. So I know one or two devotee, I will not tell their name. They used to have Gita Press Gorakhpur book, and we used to see that book all the time. So one time, one devotee said, "But Prabhu, we can't understand English. We have only Hindi book, this one. So what should we do?" I remember Giraj Swami saying, "Just read Prabhupada books, and Prabhupada will explain you in your own language." That is the importance of reading Prabhupada books. And two comment, and third one comment was, I forgot. Okay, now I'll, on Maharaj's question, that, about when will time come? It will come spontaneously. We don't have to count when time will come. Like when you start eating, you don't count how much I have fed. It will one day time will go, boom, no more eating. The same way time will come that you will get this thing. You don't have to count. Now, I was hearing a lecture Prabhupada was saying today, actually yesterday, he was explaining the holy name, Mahamantra. And he was talking about the Hare. He was talking about Hare. And he said, Radharani has so much love for Krishna, that if anybody chants Krishna's name, because she has a love, not because we have love, because she has a love, and she looks back to that devotee or to that person and says, "My dear Krishna, here is the greatest devotee. He has more love for you than me. Please engage him. Please engage him." Not that we have love, but she has love. Because of her love, she requests Krishna to engage us in Krishna's service. That he was talking about the meaning of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Now my question. You talked in your class mostly the importance of Srimati Radharani.
Right.
So that means devotees say, "Oh, Radharani is so important. So we must know about Radharani. We must read about Radharani." We get into the Gopi Bhav club. So how can you, clear the mind after hearing so much importance of Radharani? On the other hand, we had to remember Krishna all the time.
Well, please remember the verses I was given to speak on. The 4th chapter of the Adi-Lila. The reasons that Lord Chaitanya came to taste the sweetness of Srimati Radharani. It was all about Radharani, so I didn't have a choice. If you would have given me the verse Dehinu Shminyata Dehe, I would have spoken about that. So what I tried to do, and maybe I wasn't successful, is I tried to only focus on Prabhupada's presentation. Because there's so many other presentations out there, and like I said, my experience is Prabhupada's focus was on the purity and the sacrifice and of the gopis, not just relishing it, but actually their service. And so that's what we can. It's so easy for us to take that focus on the gopis and apply it to our day-to-day lives. That they're just the most selfless servants. So let me become a selfless servant. Anyabhilashita sunyam jnana karma navritam anukulyena. Yeah, I had a stroke 4 months ago, and sometimes my verses get. But you know the verse, right? The definition of Uttama Bhakti. So that should be. We can walk away from this class hopefully today. First of all, saying when it comes to understanding the gopis, we can focus exclusively on Prabhupada's presentation. So to get a clear understanding of what was Prabhupada's, one of the main things of his presentation was selfless service. The gopis had the most selfless service. So let me follow in the footsteps of their great servant, Srila Prabhupada, and develop that mood of selfless service. So that's what I hope we take away from here instead of Radhe Radhe, Is that all right?
Yeah. Other question is that you are saying that there is no difference between the cows, gopis, and all this.
I didn't say Prabhupada.
Yeah, I mean in class. And for us, for you,
Right.
you.
For you, chanting 4 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he also warned us to get into this Gopi Bhav club and all those things. But nowadays we see directly we are singing Gopi Geet. What does that mean? I remember in Vrindavan, you were the part of that. It was
You're in charge of Vrindavan, you decide. Yeah, well, we have to be careful, just in general. I mean, that was, I won't speak specifically about any specific practice because I don't want to get into managerial discussions, but we want to be careful, and at the same time follow in Prabhupada's footsteps of his appreciation for Vrindavan Dham, for the Lila of Vrindavan, as Prabhu said, for the Lila of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and appreciate that's because you and I, we spend a lot of time in Vrindavan, and we know some devotees, they go outside to hear this katha and that katha, right? So we want to have our katha, our presentations of Krishna consciousness be solid and deep and focused, and the classes be relevant and even relishable, so that people don't have to go anywhere else. And if we just, if we can teach what Prabhupada taught us, then that would be, that's what we want to do.
Can we also say that loving Srimati Radharani means following her?
Yeah.
What she wants, that is a real love.
Exactly.
And she wants us to chant the holy name of Krishna.
Yes.
Like she was saying to that parrot, Krishna Bada, Krishna Bada, Krishna Bada, Radhayam Ma Bada. Please chant Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Don't chant the name of Radharani. That's Sukadeva Goswami. That's why he didn't mention even one time the name of Radharani in Bhagavatam. Because he followed Radharani instruction, her Guruji instruction. Confirm, Ghanti baj gaya. And last, my request, can you forward this wonderful, your lecture and quote on my email so I can
send it to you, of course.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.